Welcome to my video on Associated Press style for street names and addresses. When I say the word address, what I mean, by definition, and address for the purposes of the style book, is a street name that has a building number in front of it. So if I say 901 South National Avenue, that's an address. Okay. If I just say South National Avenue, that's merely the name of a street. All right, now that we have that designation squared away, let's talk first about street names. Two things come into play here with street names. One is we need to ask ourselves about abbreviations, and we also need to ask ourselves about numbers. Okay, let's start with the numbers. If you're dealing with a street name that is also a number, like First Street or 10th Street, notice how I did that. The basic rule on numbers is, in Associated Press style, if they are 0 through 9, they are written as a word, and anything that is 10 or higher is written as a numeral. And this general rule applies directly to street names that are numbers. So First Street is written out as a word, Second Street as a word, 11th Street is used as a number, and it's an ordinal number, so it has that TH on the end. Okay, if I live on 157th Street, again, it's written as a number. And so that logic is pretty easy to remember. Street names that are numbered get treated the same as any other type of number. What about abbreviations? Well, if we're only talking about a street name, let's deal with abbreviations here. You never abbreviate any part of the name unless it's an address, okay, unless it has a number with it. So things like South National Avenue, East Kansas Expressway, Gulf Street, any of those words that road, circle, drive, court, anything that would designate a street, spell it out. Don't abbreviate avenue, don't abbreviate street, don't abbreviate boulevard, don't abbreviate any of it. Okay, that's for street names. So that's pretty easy to remember. Now, once we get into abbreviations, or I should say, once we get into addresses, the rules on abbreviations get slightly more complicated. Let's listen, start talking about addresses. So once we add a number with the address, that's when we bring abbreviations into play. First, let's look at the directional word. If you have a street that has a word like south, east, north, those do get abbreviated. Once you have a building number, abbreviation, south. Okay. In cities that have bidirectional words, there's two directions. Those also get abbreviated, but without a period. Okay. Single letter, period, bidirectional, two letters, no period. Okay. A little confusing. Fortunately, most cities don't have the bidirectional street names, so it's usually not an issue. What about this last word here? You'll notice that I abbreviated avenue. When you have a numbered address, 901, if it goes with certain ones, they get abbreviated, but it's only the three that are considered the very most common. Okay, so 744 East Cherry Street, we abbreviate street. Just to make one up here, 1300 South Delaware Boulevard. Right? Boulevard is abbreviated. Avenue, street, boulevard, those are the only ones that are abbreviated. All others are spelled out in all uses. So, road, court, circle, drive, any other word that you could associate with a street name always gets spelled out, even in an address. Okay? So those are really the basic things that you need to remember about addresses. If you want more detail, check out the AP Stylebook entries for addresses. You'll also want to take a look at the entry on highway designations, and I'll go over that just briefly. There are just basically a couple of acceptable forms that you should learn. If you need to refer to a U.S. highway, you would call it U.S. with periods, Highway 65. Okay. Interstate highways, you don't need the U.S. designation with them. Interstate 44, you don't need to say Interstate Highway 44. On second reference, in other words, once you've already used Interstate 44 in a story, you can shorten it to I-44. Same idea with the road designations. We can start calling them US 65. State highways, a couple different ways you could do this. If it is truly a state highway, you could call it State Highway 126. You could call it Missouri Highway 126 if you feel that's needed for clarity. But the main thing here is we use numbers for the highways and we spell out the word highway and capitalize the things that are considered proper nouns. That's it. That's all we have for addresses and highway designations. Hope that was helpful.